go to this every month for one reason: to keep up to date so your escrows will be handled in an appropriate and professional manner. The laws keep changing, and they have to keep changing to make sure your escrows are done right. They keep coming back for more education. And I'd like to encourage you to even think about attending one of our meetings every now and then. You know why? Because the more you understand escrow, the more you understand the real estate business. Vanessa, would you raise your hand, please? Vanessa is in charge of our, it's just like, membership. And she'd be happy to let you come at a member's price if you'd like to come to see what we do. Up on the screen, you'll see our next meeting's on the 15th, and it's talking about social media. This is a little different than what we normally do. How many of you market to people overseas? Outside of the country? Anybody? Wow. I'm surprised. Because social media will help you to market overseas and locally here. So you'll come and hear a professional speaker about that. But just a little plug for the California Escrow Association, and they support this association, the West San Gabriel Valley. So I just want to plug that really quickly. But let's talk about the topic of the day. We are in a short sale market still. We will probably be in a loss mitigation market for at least another 2 years. But the good news is, investors are beginning to move again. We're watching exchanges go up. The number of new deals are opening beginning the end of November. December, we had a high that we've had more than the last 4 years. January, February, and it will be very interesting to see what happens this month. Now, why do you think investors are beginning to make moves again, to buy and to sell?
We've gone through the bottom. They think Obama's going to lose.
At least they're praying that, right? But here's the thing. Investors know this, that you don't make money when you buy at the top of the market. You make money when you buy at the low market. Yeah, absolutely, because when you sell for whatever the market will bear. And the same is true when you go to buy. You have to buy as low as you can. And they feel that with, and look, I've been in the business since 1982. When I first began in this industry, interest rates had just dropped to 18.5%. You remember that? Yeah. Remember first interest? AITDs, land contracts, that's how we had to sell a deal. Because financing was very difficult to get. Interest rates now and prices are down together at the same time. That's unprecedented. I've never seen that in my short career since 1982. I don't think we're going to see it for much longer. Something is going to change. Did anybody put gasoline in their car this week? Inflation. Have you gone to the grocery store, to a restaurant to try to eat? Have you noticed that prices are going up? It's beginning to show its ugly head. And what will happen is these investors are going to want to do what? Make a move. Interest rates will eventually start going up, and the values to secure against inflation, they need to be in more real estate. Great place to be. Investors don't own one property, their primary residence, but they own multiple properties. Investors are great people to work with. So how do you find investors, and how do you work with them? First thing you do is you call the title company. Do we have any title people in the house today? Would you at least stand up so we can see who you are? I know we have at least 1, 2, 3 title people. Ask them for a farm package of investors who have, this is really important, held their properties for at least 15 years or longer. You want to work with people who have what? Equity or gain in those properties. 15, 20, 25, 30 years. Or absentee owners, people outside of the state who own property here locally. And begin to start soliciting and start talking with them. They'll give you that information. They'll tell you where the property is, where they're located, their mailing address is, and who they are. So that's what I recommend. You can do residential, you can do gas stations, car washes, you can do retail, office space. There's 2 to 4, 5 and above. There's a myriad types of codes or use codes or type property types that you can acquire for people who will fit in this category. Okay, that's what I recommend. And now once you connect with them, the question is, what are you going to talk with them about? Can we go to the next slide? Here are some, and everything that you'll see today and more, I can email to you if you send me an email. Fair enough? Don't just give me your card, though I'd love to have it. Send me an email asking me for this. And I'll give you a multitude of materials you can begin to send to your clients. Questions that ask, like, how do I maximize the equity that's grown in my property? Well, if you've owned a property for 15, 20, 25, 30 years, you have equity. There's 2 things that you have in your property. One is called ROI, the other one's ROE. ROI stands for what? Anybody know? Return on investment. Are these people happy that they bought 15, 20, 25, 30 years ago or longer? Absolutely. They have equity in their properties. They have a great return on their investment. They only have one regret. And what is that regret? They wish they bought more? Absolutely. And that's the regret many will have in 10 years from now, when the interest rates and the prices were down together at the same time. They have a great return on investment, but the question is, what is the return on their equity? We'll talk about that in just a second. Second thing is, how hard is my rental property working? How do I measure its performance? Many people say, well, you know, I put down $30,000, $50,000, $80,000, $100,000, whatever it was, a number of years ago when I bought the property, and I make this much in income each month. It's a great return. Oh, really? Well, they're using the wrong vehicle or measuring stick. That's a cash-on-cash return. But what's the cash-on-equity return? What is the equity in the property doing for you? If you were to take equity out of a property and put it into the bank, you'd get an interest rate. So the question is, what is the interest rate off the equity that the property is generating with the income minus the expenses? We'll show you that in a minute. Number 3, depreciation. Depreciation is a huge point. Investors buy properties for 4 reasons. Primarily, one of them is depreciation, the ability to write off or have a tax break so they can offset the income that the property is generating to them. But the problem is, if they bought 15, 20, 25, 30 years ago, they're depreciating back on the purchase price of the building. Not the land, but the improvements to the land, the building. So if they bought the property for $250,000 that many years ago, 20, 25 years ago, and now it's worth over $1 million, they're depreciating on a very small level. It may be time to do something about that. Number 4, stress and time. Number 5, risk. A second reason I want to talk about. One of the other reasons why investors buy investment real estate, because they don't want to put all their eggs in. What does that mean? One property. If people say, well, I feel great, my properties are paid off. Oh, really? That is a wonderful thing, except for one problem. What happens if we have a massive earthquake and you haven't talked to Leticia for earthquake insurance? You've just lost everything. Ask the people in Japan about tsunamis. Can anything like that happen here? Yeah. What about the government? Has anybody heard of something called rent control? That can be worse than earthquakes and tsunamis. And you don't think that's growing here in California? The sentiment with the government the way it is? Safety of principle. When you get a farm package of these investors who've owned these properties for 20 years or longer, guess what? Almost every one of them will be near or in retirement. Do you think they could risk at that point in their lives? And that's why doing an exchange or going into other types of properties to diversify that portfolio, to hedge themselves against risk, is a good thing. Safety, very, very important. That's number 5. Number 6, number 7, very important. How do I hold title to my properties? How do I defer the tax burden? If I were you, you need a good team around you. You need to work with 2 people, at least. A good estate planning attorney that you can refer your clients to. And number 2, a really good tax person who understands real estate. If I don't feel good today and I go to the doctor and he says, you need heart surgery, do I just let him open me up? Or do I go to a cardiologist that specializes in heart surgery? Of course I go to the cardiologist. They're both doctors. I want somebody who specializes in heart. Well, you need a tax person who specializes in real estate, who understands how to work it. And those people in your corner will really help your clients. So these are the types of things we want to talk about. The third item, very quickly, that's very important to investors, not just the depreciation, not just the safety or not putting all their eggs in one basket, but what's very important to investors is they want to see their asset, their investment worth more in the future than it is today. Tell me, of all the investments you know of, tell me what can generate income and go up in value all at the same time, over time. Very few investments. The only one I personally know of is investment real estate. It's a great thing. And lastly, is the most important thing is cash flow. Investors buy properties because they want the properties to work for them so they don't have to. And that is defined as cash flow. So very quickly, how do we do this? What do we talk about with these people? Well, here's some items. Let's flip to another slide and see what we come up with. Here's a really neat test for a client who you come up with, who's owned their property for 15, 20, 25 years or longer. How hard is the property working? Have you ever hired anybody who's lazy? Do you know anybody who's lazy? Who needs to work harder? Who needs to go to work? The question is, how lazy is your investment property? Is it working hard? You bought it to work for you to produce income and all these other items. So the question is, how do you measure how hard it's working? Number 1, what is the gross income? How much does it generate? Number 2, how much does it cost you each month in terms of expenses? Number 3, subtract 2 from 1, that gives you your net income. Number 4, what is the net equity of the property? Net equity means what? What would it sell for today minus debt against the property? And lastly, you divide. You take number 3, the net income, you divide by 4, the net equity, and that tells you your percentage of return. It tells you what the interest rate is on your building in terms of what it's doing for you. Now, what do you think investment real estate should be generating in terms of a return each year? Income minus expenses, considering all the equity in the property. What kind of a return do you think investors should be getting? Anybody tell me? I want to hear you. What kind of a percentage?
7 to 10.
7 to 10. Anybody else? Pardon me? 15%. You know what the average rate of return is today? Average means what? There's no such thing as average. Everybody's different. But there's a range.
3%.
Uh-oh. Okay, here it is. Average means some will make less, some will make more. We have noticed that the average investor who's owned their properties for 15 years or longer are getting a return on their building somewhere between 0.5% to 3.5%. And if you don't believe me, do the math. And investors don't believe it. And they go back and they redo this, and they put the same numbers in because that's what it is. And by the way, these numbers are found on their Schedule E of their tax return. They tell the government this every year. And guess what? They're in shock. I'll give you a good example. I was speaking in the San Fernando Valley at a real estate meeting, and one of the agents said, look, my mother is 85 years old. She has a building that is completely paid off, full equity, no debt. She nets, after expenses, $5,000 a month. She can't spend $5,000 a month. I manage the building for her. Why should she sell a building like that? She makes more money than she needs. There's no debt. Everything's good. I said, well, maybe you should keep the building, but you should at least know what the rate of return is on the building in terms of that equity. So what they did is, she filled this out, and at the end of the meeting, she asked me to go and sit down and speak with her, which I did. You know what her mother's rate of return was? Just almost 0.5%. And then she said to me, you know what I can do? I can sell this building for her, pay the taxes, put the money in the bank, and if I get 1% interest, I just doubled my mother's income. Now think about that. Or, she said, I can sell the building, because my mother's not, she's 85 years old, she's not going to live forever. I know I eventually will inherit this from her. I could sell the building with all its equity, and I can do a 1031 exchange and do what? I can acquire 3 buildings that will generate almost as much income as this, or more, depending on what I find, but the potential for growth and equity will be profound compared to having this one building. Did the light bulb just turn on? See, our job is not to sell. Our job is not to twist people's arms. Our job is to educate investors, to let them see what they have, how good of a return they're getting on the property, and if the property is still right for them. Just because you own a building doesn't mean you should keep it forever. Do you keep your stock forever? Do you trade it to other things that are coming up that's going to be good? Why wouldn't you do that with your properties? You know what the difference is between investors and homeowners? They're both emotionally attached to their properties, but in different ways. The homeowner is emotionally attached to the building. The investor is emotionally attached to their money. Because they bought it for what reason? Investment. Investment. So very quickly, if they decide to sell, they're going to pay what? Capital gains taxes. And today, you know, let me ask you a question. How many of you, and I want you to raise your hand if you think this statement is true, how many of you think taxes will stay the same or go down in the next few years? How many of you think the taxes could go up in the next few years? Well, currently capital gains taxes are 15% long term, but guess what? People keep saying we're not paying enough because we work really hard and we go out and buy, blood, sweat, and tears we put out there, we put these hours in. So they say you're rich, you should pay more. So that's what they want you to do. They want you to pay more taxes. They think the capital gains tax should be around 25. This 15% ends when? December 31st of this year. That's it. We don't know what's going to happen next. Yes?
You have accumulated depreciation, which changes the formula a little bit.
And the depreciation tax when you sell is what? 25%. It's a flat tax. And then you have to pay another tax to the state of California. I used to call it California. But I guess he's chasing his kids. He's not there anymore. But California have to pay a tax of how much? 9.55%. So let's see, 9.55 to the state, 15% to the IRS for the capital gains, and then 25% recapture. You know what the investor says? Gosh, I don't remember putting these people on title with me when I bought the property. You know, what are they, my partner?
Yeah, they are.
But in 1921, Congress said we can start trading properties and defer taxes, and today we call that a 1031 exchange, which means this. This cannot be your home, where you live, your primary residence. It cannot be your second home. It cannot be your vacation home. But almost everything else is considered investment real estate, and you can do this like-kind trade or an exchange where I sell something to you and I buy something from you, and I do an exchange for that, so I get to defer. Is it tax-free?
No.
No, it's deferred. What is tax-free?
Nothing.
No, actually there is something. The sale of your primary residence under the 121 exemption, if you qualify with the 250 or the 500 if you're married and filing a joint return. There's been some changes in that. Congress tried to take some things away from you, not this Congress, but the Congress before. They've limited it on some items. If you move into it after beginning 2009, if you convert it into a primary residence and it wasn't before, It's not that you bought it new. You bought it some time ago, you had it as a rental or a second home, you convert it into a primary residence. Then they change the rules on you. They're not going to give you the whole thing. They're going to give you a fraction of it. Talk to your CPA, they can explain more of it to you.
3% tax next year.
Well, that's, by the way, you know what that tax is for?
Yeah, healthcare.
Healthcare. Isn't it amazing how all this stuff happens after an election? And I'm not trying to pick on anybody. No, I'm not. That's not my job to do today. You can ask me another time, I'll pick on you. But here's the key, that they won't do anything. Politicians are paralyzed during election year, aren't they? They're afraid. Folks, we have to fend for ourselves. The exchange is a good thing. It has to be like kind, which means I can exchange a investment real estate into another investment real estate, which helps me with what? Create new cash flow, diversify my portfolio, create new depreciation possibly by buying up. It allows me to manipulate my portfolio so it does for me what I want it to do. And it's secure, it's real estate. It's not like buying stock in the stock market. Gold can go up and gold can go down, but it doesn't pay rent. Investment property does. Of all the people you know who have the most amount of money, who are the most affluent, how many of them own investment real estate? I would say most to all. In fact, there's a little flyer that I have. I think we have it here today. It's the one that talks about Dear Homeowner. It's titled that. And this is something we can give to you. This is a great piece to send to your clients who don't own investment real estate. Basically, all this says is this. Interest rates are at an all-time low. Prices are down. Of all the people you know who have the most amount of money or are the most affluent financially, do any of them own investment real estate? When you hear people talk, they say, oh, they're rich. They own investment real estate. They own apartment buildings. They own commercial buildings. Well, why can't they buy one? Just one. Now. Because in 10 years, you know what's going to happen? They're going to love you and they're going to hate you. You know why they're going to love you? Because in 10 years from now, that property is going to be worth more and they're making cash flow. You cannot cash flow 15 years ago what you can cash flow today. It is amazing what you can get into that will generate income for you. Number two, that's how they're going to love you. They're going to hate you. You know why? They're going to be mad because you only sold them one instead of selling them two. But it's a good opportunity to go back to your clients. Here's the bottom line. I don't know, how much time do we have left? Is my time up? 5 minutes? Really? That long? Okay, good. Thank you. Here's the point, folks. Getting in front of people is what we do. You see, people don't buy from us because we sell to them. People buy from us because we've created a relationship with them based on what's important to them. They don't care about me. They don't care about you. They care about their cash flow, their write-offs, their safety of their investments. And frankly, they want to see their investments be worth more in the future. And to talk with them about these items that are so important to them is something that creates a relationship where people begin to listen and trust. Because other people are trying to sell. We're trying to create a relationship. These types of items will do it. Very quickly, when I'm doing an exchange, I can do it one of generally 3 ways, although there's 6. Number 1, if you don't mind pulling up the 6 types, that one you did originally, thank you. I can close concurrently. Do I need an accommodator to close concurrently? The answer is yes. There's 2 types of concurrent exchanges. I don't know if you know this. There's one where I trade with an individual, so if we have deeds and we swap deeds, I don't need an accommodator. But if I sell to one party and buy from a different party and close these concurrently or simultaneously, I do need an accommodator. And when does the accommodator come into being? While escrow is open. Don't call me. Well, you can, but don't call me after escrow closes because I'm going to cry with you. You cannot do an exchange after the sale has closed. So concurrently, you still need an accommodator. if you're buying a different person's property, not trading with the one you're relinquishing to. Number 2, delayed. Delayed means I'm late. I cannot close a purchase while I'm closing my sale. So, because of lawsuits that the IRS lost, we can now close up to 180 days later under one condition, as long as we identify in the first 45 days. And under the 3 property rule, how many properties can I identify under the 3 property rule? Anybody in this auditorium know? Who said 2.5?
3.
Can I change? Here's a common thing. I'm going to be right up front with you, okay? You may not want to use my services after I tell you this. You know that 45-day rule? You know what the IRS says about that? Is it okay to do something after 45 days? This is what it is. It's criminal tax fraud. Criminal. That means they find out you go to jail, your client goes to jail, and the accommodator goes to jail. That's it. And they're dead serious about that. Don't do it. If an accommodator is willing to do it, and they're willing to cheat that badly, did you know they have to hold your clients' money as well? What happens when times get tough and they're holding your clients' money? How many times we've seen accommodators, whether they be title companies or whether they be independents, run away with the money, abscond with the funds. Bonding, errors and omissions, don't mess with the 45 days. You want an accommodator who's above reproach. Number 2, make sure that that money is secured. It's in a qualified trust account. That there's insurance, there's E&O, bonding, a legal department, they know what they're doing. These are really important things. They have a good reputation in the community. Your escrow officers know who they are. So be careful. On that delayed exchange is a good thing. Just make sure you're working with a good company. Next, reverse, big time. I'm going to end with this. The government lets me purchase and then sell. I can do it backwards. It's very expensive to do that. Where's the money coming from to buy if I haven't had a sale? So where's that money going to come from? You have to what? Swing loan, bridge loan, go into your bank account, borrow from your rich uncle, whatever. But the bottom line is, you can buy. Why would I want to buy first? Because opportunity's knocking and I can get a property for $150,000 below market. It's a great deal. Reverse exchanges are worth it if you can find the right property. The whole exchange is predicated on going into what? Better property. It's not about selling. It's about going into something that's going to benefit me more. And I can do it on a tax-deferred basis. Well, I probably said too much. But I hope this was helpful today. Are there any questions or anything I can answer?